Hey, and welcome to your Marketing Science Wake Up Call. I'm Will Marks, Head of Marketing Science at Mutinex, and this is Morning. And today we're discussing why should we care about the ROI of brand media. Now, taking a step back, I was watching some TV last night. It was BVOD, FYI, because I'm a millennial and I over-index on that channel. And I was in the middle of swearing at someone's pathetic attempt at a souffle on MasterChef when a new ad for IKEA came on. And if you're not familiar with it, it celebrates 50 years of IKEA in Australia, highlighting how in some of life's most pivotal moments, like pivoting a sofa up a staircase, we turn to our nearest and our dearest, the people who have to love us, no matter what we make them do. And I was a big fan. It gave me the warm and fuzzies, made me think, yeah, I quite like IKEA. And I'm not someone who's always that in touch with their feelings. And it also made me feel mildly guilty about always telling my friends I'm busy when they're moving house. But by the by, am I going to buy a sofa this week? Probably not. But who knows? Next time I need one, maybe my new emotional connection might bring them to the top of my mind. But that might be months or years away. And you know what? I think IKEA might just be okay with that, because after all, this was clearly a brand campaign. They're not expecting a mass run on cutlery trays overnight. That's what their performance marketing is for. All they wanted from me was some top-of-mind awareness, a stronger emotional connection, maybe a bump in consideration. And that brings me to today's episode. If brand campaigns aren't designed to drive short-term sales, should we be measuring their ROI at all? Or are we just forcing emotional, long-term brand building through a performance marketing shaped keyhole? Now, to help me unpack that, I've invited the brilliant Grace Gilbert, a marketing science partner at Mutinex, to join me. Let's bring her in. Grace, I believe you are in the market for sofas and houseware goods at the moment. Will you be shopping at IKEA anytime soon?
I think absolutely. I'm, as you said, moving in a couple of weeks. So I will be doing the obligatory IKEA trip and leaving with much more than I intended.
Good to hear. And I hope IKEA are watching. Now, let's get a bit more serious on this topic. Measuring the ROI of a brand campaign. Should we be doing it? Or is it like that old adage of measuring how well a fish can climb a tree?
I think that advertisers should absolutely care about the short-term ROI of their brand campaigns. I do take your point about fish climbing the tree. Brand is definitely different from performance and it works differently over time, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't measure it. Not because we expect brand campaigns to behave like bottom of funnel activations, but because building brand builds both long-term equity and drives short-term sales.
Interesting. I guess ultimately, outside of solutions like market mix modeling, the incremental sales from brand campaigns on channels such as out of home or TV, they can be very difficult to measure, and so often just aren't. So how do brand campaigns measure up in terms of driving sales?
I think one of the things that gets overlooked is that a broad brand-focused campaign can actually deliver greater incremental sales than hyper-targeted ones. If we shift the perspective from efficiency and conversion rates to conversion volumes, it shows how broad reach campaigns are essential to growth. So if we take, for example, a 1% conversion rate for a broad audience reach of, say, 10 million people, that's going to deliver twice the volume of a 5% conversion rate on a targeted audience of 1 million people. Lower funnel campaigns will often aim to reach those people who have already shown intent to buy, and by which point they might have already had a brand preference or made up their mind about where they're going to purchase. Broad reach campaigns will drive incremental sales by attracting new customers earlier in that purchase journey. It's not just about reaching those 5% of people who are ready to buy right now, but it's also about reaching and building associations with the 95% who could buy later. But in order to prove that value, especially to someone like a CFO, we have to show some returns, even if it is just early signals.
Interesting. So, I mean, I guess this isn't a conversation of brand or performance. I know that's a topic that people love or love to hate, but it is great and interesting to hear that brand campaigns reaching broad audiences can drive significant sales volume, and then across that broad audience can still also be doing a good job, or the key job, of building awareness and consideration. In terms of CFOs, let's not forget that they're not going to be as familiar with all the industry research that supports ongoing brand building. And they're always going to be focused on ensuring that they're on track for hitting growth targets for the next quarter, the next year. So I guess we're saying here that measuring brand ROI is then going to support advertisers in getting brand budgets into their media plan.
Yeah, that's right. I think the reality is that brand media is really hard to defend if you're not putting any numbers on the board. If we can't show that it's moving something in the short term, it's a real uphill battle for marketers to sustain that investment. And the idea that a brand campaign might be quietly working away in the background and is going to explode into these big results in the months to come, it's just not really how memory works as well. The research tells us that memory decays over time. It doesn't necessarily grow strength passively afterwards. So if a campaign isn't doing anything now, chances are it's not really building towards a future payoff either. And that's why I think it still matters for marketers to measure those short-term outcomes, not because it's all that matters, but because it also gives us a read on creative effectiveness, the quality of the reach, whether our messaging is actually cutting through. And it's not about making brand accountable to performance metrics, but it's not letting it off the hook entirely.
Okay, got it. But I'm conscious we're talking specifically about the ROI of brand media and a brand media campaign. What we haven't yet considered is that synergistic effect of brand media with lower funnel media activities like performance media. How do we take that into account to get a broader understanding of the value of brand media?
Yeah, I think that this is exactly where marketers can undervalue the value of their brand investment if they're only looking at it in isolation. Brand media doesn't just drive sales on its own, but it also makes all of your other channels work harder throughout the funnel. And that upper funnel investment that IKEA has made on that emotional messaging, and it's really worked to build those associations with you, for example, it hasn't inspired you to go out and go straight to IKEA to buy a couch. But when you're sitting on your couch in a couple of weeks and staring at your coffee table, then maybe you'll start looking for something fresh, and you'll be Googling, and it'll increase your likelihood of clicking on the IKEA placement that you see. And so marketers should be looking to their full funnel effectiveness over time so that they can see how brand investment improves conversion and ROI beyond just the sales that we can directly attribute to those brand investments.
It's common for advertisers to have distinct marketing teams, I guess, isn't it? So have a brand marketing team, a performance marketing team, and traditionally it's the performance marketing team that have had the answers to say, this is what we spent, this is what these platforms are telling us that we got for those. And so you're getting quite a divergence in the metrics that people talk to. I think what's really powerful is if there is that holistic measurement to say, how has our media performed as a whole? Not just how did our performance media campaigns work, if especially they're being driven to some extent by all the brand media that they're putting out into market. So rather than saying what is the ROI of our brand media, what's the ROI of our performance media, it should just be what is the performance of our media as a whole, and how does that start to change as we start to lean more heavily into brand, or if we start to pull away from brand and start to invest further into performance performance media. Okay, now that's about the short-term aspects of it. So what can brand campaigns do, and how is there synergistic effects of brand with performance? But what about the long-term benefits in brand media, and what that can be delivering to advertisers, and actually how can they start measuring and understanding and improving it?
Yeah, that long-term measurement piece can be really difficult for marketers. I think especially when they're using tools like MMM, they can understand a bit more of a clearer picture of how that longer-term effect is being seen. I think if they think about their baseline sales that you might see in MMMs, you might think about baseline sales as building physical and mental availability over time. So those big brand campaigns really do the work of building that mental availability that will last beyond just the short-term effects. So when they're seeing strength and growth in those baseline sales, they can start to attribute some of that growth to those brand investments that they've made over the prior years. They can also then look at their metrics like their consideration and their awareness that they're collecting through those monthly, quarterly, yearly dips to understand which metrics are driving purchase intent. For some categories, awareness might just be enough to drive extra units, but in others, building strong increases in consideration might be more important. So unpacking what their research says in their category about what do they need to be driving in terms of brand equity metrics and prioritizing those in their media mix as well.
You mentioned base sales. I guess base sales are also quite hard to measure. It's not something that we don't know an incremental sale from a non-incremental sale, do we? So outside market mix models, I guess you have lift tests where you can see to what extent a holdout group is still purchasing to give you a sense of base. But otherwise, I guess econometric approaches like market mix models give you that insight into the run rate, that underlying demand of sales that we expect to see. And that's a great way of seeing how reliant an advertiser is on their short-term media and other activations like discounts and offers, etc. I know often when we talk to advertisers, it's about the health of their underlying base sales. And so getting that view on the health of your underlying base can give you that insight into the value that you've been generating from all your brand media in the past. Now, I guess the last question that I want to go into with the time that we have is actually how advertisers can look forward and start to plan better through having a better measurement of ROI, of brand media, and broader media campaigns together. So how can advertisers start actually applying measurement to forward thinking?
Yeah, I think that's where MMM becomes a real strategic tool as opposed to just a measurement answer. So I think that if we're thinking about the classic 60-40 split that a lot of advertisers are sticking to as a bit of a rule of thumb of how they should break up their investment between brand and performance, things like MMM can really help to pull away the curtain there and move you from just rules of thumb and benchmarks into knowing exactly what's working for your business in your category with your creative messaging in the current moment, and then looking forward to how that will continue to deliver on both short-term and long-term goals. I think for depending on the business and their goals, if you're driving short-term revenue targets, you might be naturally leaning towards performance media because you can so clearly demonstrate where those transactions are coming from. But using MMM, we can use forecasting tools to predict what short-term sales that will also be driven by brand media so that we can keep that investment where those long-term goals are also driven, whilst also assuring the CFO that we will be delivering on those short-term goals as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible to have those big pieces of research from the likes of Lesbian A, Peter Field, that talk to 60-40 being on average the right kind of split for most brands. But I guess the danger can be that if people just start to lean on generic recommendations, it's hard to have an edge, isn't it? It's hard to actually find a way to make sure you're going to run faster and grow faster than your competitors if you've all got a similar strategy there. And as you say, it can actually be a danger for some advertisers if they start to lean too heavily into brand and that brand isn't delivering as many incremental sales as their performance media might be. So it's so important to make sure that you can have that bespoke split of brand investment versus performance investment that's going to work for you, rather than what broader guidelines are recommending, which, as I say, I'm a massive fan of. But if you can start to again build on those and get your own bespoke views, that's going to be even more powerful. Okay, well, look, that's all we're going to have time for today. So, Grace, thank you so much for joining me. Good luck on your hunt for sofas and tables and lamps and everything else that you need to buy. And thanks to everyone for watching today. Please look out for our LinkedIn poll to decide what our hot topic for next week is going to be. And stay tuned for the next episode of Morning. Thank you so much.